Hello and welcome to another episode of the Big Money Stylist Podcast. I'm your host, Danielle. And if you've been listening to this podcast for a while, we cater towards hairstylists, but recently I've had some amazing guests on, and I have a very special guest here at my home today. Her name is Natalie Jill. I recently came across your stuff and I was like, oh my gosh, like I felt like I related to a lot of your content, your stories and everything. So immediately had the teams reach out and you said yes. And I'm like, perfect. So I like inviting people into my home. It feels like a little bit more personable. But what I'm really excited about too is doing your hair. So we're gonna.
I'm excited about that too.
Yeah, I'm like, we could do hair, but why don't we sneak in some podcasts too? So we have Natalie here, you guys, and I'm really going to talk to you or interview her about kind of her journey. She's heavily in the fitness world, but more so, she really nailed her niche. And I always am educating hairstylists, like you have to find your niche even inside of hair. I'm like, you can't just take on every single service or you're not going to be successful. So I kind of want to start with, talk to me about how did your journey start? Like, have you always been into fitness or did you just like wake up and you're like, I'm doing it?
No, I was not in fitness at all. In fact, I'm 52 right now as we're recording this. And my fitness journey began at age 36. Okay. And I'll tell you a little backstory on that. So I was in corporate America and I always had a sales mind. So I was a sales director in corporate America. But everything changed when I had my daughter because a lot of unexpected events happened. The first one was I gained 60 pounds when I was pregnant, which might not sound a lot to somebody listening. I made a human, but you're like me. I'm 5'2".
Yeah.
So 60 pounds is a lot.
Right.
And so that was my first experience being having a lot of extra weight. And anyone wondering if that's just baby weight, my daughter only weighed 6 pounds.
Yeah.
So it was definitely not just baby weight. So that happened. It was also back in 2007. And when the housing market had crashed and I was a victim of that, I lost my house and I was going through a divorce. So I had this whole series of things happen to me that could have thrown me into total circumstance.
Right.
Like I was overweight. I had postpartum depression. I was losing my house. I was now going through a divorce and my job, my career, which was amazing, required full-time travel. And I wasn't gonna be able to do that anymore as a single mom.
Right.
So I had all these like circumstances hitting me. And I can go down the whole story of how I got depressed and all of that. And all that's very important. However, the most important thing was I made a decision in all those circumstances that I wanted to create a different life for myself. And I always say a decision because anywhere we are in our lives, we bring up all the things happening to us, our age, our diagnosis, our salary, or whatever. And we can always make a new decision for something different. So I made a new decision in a moment that I wanted to change things and turn them around. And one of those actions had to be fixing my body.
Yeah.
And I knew that was the one thing I could control.
I think it's so easy to fall into that victim mindset. You're like, oh, I gained the weight. I'm a mom. Like, it's okay. We're kind of told, like, especially you told me how to 36, right?
Yeah, 35. And then so I was like 35 and a half. So yeah.
And it's funny because you'll hear this all the time. It's like, oh, don't expect a lot. It's okay if you don't lose the weight or whatever, but you made a choice. Yeah. You're like, okay, well, I can let this story kind of take over my life or I can make a new choice. So do you have like a moment like where you're like, today's the day? Like, I always say it's like saying yes. You're like, I'm saying yes and I'm going to commit. And I don't know how I'm going to get there, but.
So it was actually a moment. I was walking my dogs and my daughter. I remember she was in the stroller. I had my 2 dogs. And the one thing I did do was get out every day and go for a walk. And I was walking and I passed one of these windows that had a mirror reflection looking back at me. And I remember just looking at myself and having this moment of, I don't even recognize what I've become. Like I didn't even recognize myself. And I remember I felt depressed. I felt sad. And I'm just looking at this myself looking back at me going, I don't even know what happened. Who is that person? And anyone listening, if you've had that moment, you know what I'm talking about, where you're almost you don't even realize
like
you're so detached from how you're showing up, how you look, how you've been. So I had this moment and I was feeling so sorry for myself. And what was going on in my brain was all this justification. Well, you're divorced. Well, you this, well, that. And I wanted to be angry at the world.
Right.
But something interrupted me. And I just thought, what if I make another decision? What if I just make another decision? So I remember my new decision was I'm going to come back stronger than ever. I'm going to turn this hardship into a success. Yeah. That's just what my decision was. And I remember turning around and walking home, and I had these like sparks of hope. Like, what if there's something else? Like, what if you could get married again one day? What if you could have a great house you love again one day? What if you can have a better body than you had before? Like, it was just these what ifs.
Yeah.
But I had these things pop up, and I call them false assumed truths. Like this voice that kept telling me, but you can't. And I know you know that voice. It's but you can't. But you're, this, but you're a loser, but you're overweight now, but you're this. And I kept hearing that voice, but I kept focusing on, but the what if, but the what if. So I went home that day and I turned on TV and put my daughter down for a nap. And I remember Oprah was on. And I used to watch Oprah back in the day, but she was on and they were talking about vision. And it was the first time I actually heard that, but they were talking about being open to possibility and getting clear on a vision. And honestly, that changed my whole life because I started operating from possibility and potential versus circumstance.
Right.
But it was that day.
It's crazy. I love that you just said it's the what if, because it's like, I think a lot of times we tell ourselves these stories and you're like, but what if that story's not true? But what if? Right. And so many times if you just ask that simple question, you're like, oh, you don't have anything to support those stories that you're telling yourself in your mind. You're like, well, why can't I have this house? Why can't I have this marriage? Why can't I? And when you kind of like let go of that, you still have to do the work to get there.
And we shut that down in life so much. Like I'm in your beautiful house right now, and you all can't see her beautiful house right now, but she's got this amazing ocean view in this amazing neighborhood, and her house is gorgeous. And some people would walk into this house and go, oh, I would never have that. Like that's an instant shutdown, or judge even you for having it. Like I've trained my mind to not ever do that and to always be in possibility.
Yeah.
Like, so no matter what we see, you see somebody else, they look amazing. They have a great body, or you see someone's house that you love, or you see someone's career that you love.
Yeah.
Learning to train your mind to, but what if?
Yeah. Or like, I'm always like, how do they get there? I'm like, I want to put myself in rooms where I feel like the smallest person in the room.
Yeah. Be curious.
Yeah. So how did you, so you made this decision.
Yeah.
And now you've kind of got like this fitness brand and everything. Like, how did you educate yourself?
Great question.
Like, how did you get fit?
Yeah.
Like, how did you lose
Great
the weight?
Question. So the quick answer is I did a lot of actions. However, most people start taking actions before working on that first part, decision and vision. So what I did, true story, is I made a decision board. I call them decision boards, not vision boards.
I like that better.
And I put literal like pictures of really fit girls and just like all these things. And I remember putting fit girls on magazine covers. Now, I was overweight, 36 years old. I had never fitness modeled or done anything like that. But I put these really fit girls with abs and they looked amazing on magazine covers. And I put like happy mom and daughter, like new relationship. I just put all these things. I remember I put $1 million too.
Nice.
Like that was my number. And every day I would look at that board before I did anything else. And I would stare at that board and I would get in the feeling of it. And I would say, okay, if I was the girl living in that board, if that was me, what actions would I have to do today? Like, how would I be living my life?
Right.
For example, I had a picture of a beach view, like your view right here. And I wasn't living at the beach. I was living in my house that was being foreclosed on. And I certainly didn't have extra money or anything. But I thought if I was the girl living in that board, I would walk at the beach every day. So every day I went and walked to the beach. I just put my daughter in the car and went to the beach and walked.
Yeah.
I'd also look at these fit girls and I'd say, okay, if I was the girl on that magazine cover, how would I eat? Well, I certainly wouldn't eat the frozen dinner or the Doritos or the McDonald's. I would eat natural, unprocessed, real foods. If I was the girl living in that board, I would work out and move my body. I didn't have a gym membership. I didn't have extra money for a gym membership or a trainer. So I started, what can I do at home?
Yeah.
So I started taking a lot of actions, but I did it on top of constantly operating from that vision, like literally every day saying, if I was that girl, what actions would I take? And I went down rabbit holes on that. I am a researcher. So like, I didn't just go online and take information overload. I became a licensed master sports nutritionist. Like I went and studied and did that. I didn't just go learn from a trainer. I became a certified trainer. Just, I wanted to like get the education for myself, but something really wild happened. As I was doing this for myself, I went on Facebook, and Facebook at the time had like my 100 high school friends. There was like hardly anyone there. And I went on Facebook and I said, okay, this is who I am right now. I'm in a really crappy place in my life, but I'm changing and I'm going to become a different version of me. And I'm going to share what I'm eating here every day for accountability. It was for myself.
Yeah.
So I was that original, like take a picture of your food and put it there.
Yeah.
But I started posting that and something really wild happened. not only did my actions start compounding, but my body started changing and people started noticing.
Yeah.
And they were asking me, what are you doing?
Yeah.
What are you eating? What are you doing? So my sales brain starts going on. And I didn't think I'm going to create a business or any of that. But as I'm sharing these recipes, a lot of people asked what they were. So somebody told me, I remember the comment, they said, why don't you make an ebook? I didn't even know what that meant. I remember I looked up what is an ebook. It was an electronic cookbook.
Yeah.
So I took all my BlackBerry phone photos and I put them on a Word document and I made my first
So that's your first book.
That was my first $12 ebook.
Oh,
it was
nice.
an ebook. And I put it on Facebook and I said, I have a $12 ebook. If you're in, let me know. And I would send them a PayPal link.
Nice.
They would send me back the $12 and I would email them the book.
The book, yeah.
That's literally how I started my business.
That's crazy. It's it's funny because I started with like an online course and it was literally like I'd pack my own kits and like mail it out. I'm like, they don't know that I'm literally like putting this together and putting a sticker on it. Like,
that's
like how it starts.
Yeah.
So you started this, you were kind of educating people on like what was going on with you.
All that was happening on the food part was I was just showing them recipes at first.
Okay.
And what happened was my body was also changing.
Yeah.
And I was starting to get noticed by the fitness world because I was really committed to my vision. I didn't know how it was going to come to fruition, but I was like, I'm going to be on magazine covers. And I remember having lunch with a friend and she told me she was mortified by me. She's like, you are in your late 30s and you're going to be a fitness model. Like, what are you doing? And
you're like, because I can.
I didn't care. I was just on this mission.
Yeah.
And so I was getting fit and people were noticing. So on Facebook, they said, how are you eating the food? Like, how do you put it together?
Yeah.
So I sat down another weekend and I wrote something called 7-Day Jumpstart.
Oh, yeah.
And I just wrote it in a weekend. And I remember asking my
husband.
husband.
How do you write a book in a weekend?
Well, it was just that I just like came out of me. It was a 12-page ebook initially. And my husband, was my boyfriend at the time, because I'm compounding some years here, but I remember asking him to proofread it. And he's like, no. He's like, it's Sunday. I don't want to proofread it. And no one's going to buy ebook 7-Day Jumpstart is what he said to me. He said, no one's going to buy that. Like there's a million ebooks and a million people doing nutrition. And and I was like, this is where possibility is a thing, right? Because I wasn't in circumstance now. I was in possibility. I'm like, well, I don't care that there's other things. They're asking me for this. Yeah. And I wrote this. So I wrote my ebook and I put it out on Facebook again. And this time it was $35. My husband did not proofread it. He was my boyfriend at the time. And we had 10 sales the first day.
Oh, wow.
It was like, I remember being like 35 times. Like, wow, I just made $350. And the first 2 messages back were, you didn't even proofread this.
Oh, no.
So I remember like that criticism that could have shut me down. And I was like, okay, nope, I'm going to take this seriously. So I kept going. And it was the same thing. Like they would message me, they want it. I sent them the link. It was like an email transaction.
Yeah.
So what happened was the 7-Day Jumpstart really worked for a lot of people. And as people were doing it, they would message me and say, oh my God, I just lost 5 pounds or I just lost 7 pounds. And
oh, wow.
Wow, it's only been a week and holy cow, this is amazing.
Is the 7-Day Jumpstart, is it talking about like nutrition and diet or
so
what's like
originally
the whole premise?
It was literally just diet. So there's been a lot of evolutions of this, but this is how it started. So what happened was, they would message me. So let's say you would message me and say, I just lost 7 pounds. I feel so good. My energy's up. I say, that's so amazing. Is it okay if I screenshot this? Because I think it's super motivating for other people. And you'd say, sure. So I'd screenshot it and I'd say, oh my gosh, y'all, look what she just sent me.
Social proof.
Yeah, this is congratulations. And I wrote, who is next? That's what I did. That book turned into $1 million in sales.
Oh, wow.
Year one.
Wow.
Year one, $1 million in sales.
Did you do all the promotions for it and everything?
I knew nothing about sales pages. I wasn't using Facebook ads. Now, things evolved, meaning my husband then got involved. He's like, okay, let's automate this.
Yeah.
I did another version of it. That first year, though, on our first or second version, we did about $1 million on that. And my sales hat like really went up then. Now, 7-Day Jumpstart has been redone 6 times now. I mean, this is years later. And it's also now a best-selling book in stores. So cool. It's quite extensive. It's night and day. But the reason I share that story is a lot of people would look at my success now and go, they're comparing their beginning to my way later state. And what I want you to know is without anything, without a sales page, without a funnel, without anything, I literally created $1 million from nothing. And so my business was born from that. I didn't know anything about business, but I started getting really curious. And what happened was people said, well, this is great. Now, how do we work out? So I went that next level. And then I ended up making, we don't have those now, but DVDs were a thing.
Yeah.
So I did.
Is that sad?
Yeah.
My daughter was like, what's a DVD? I was like, don't worry about it.
But I'm forever a student. Like I would encourage your listeners to be too. So like, for instance, when I wanted to make a workout DVD, I had never done a workout DVD.
Right.
So I was like, well, who's the best in the world at workout DVDs? And to me, it was Tammy Lee Webb. Now she was, I don't know if you know who she is. She's older than, but she was Buns of Steel back in the day.
Yeah.
She was the top DVD person in the 80s and the 90s.
Yeah.
So and it turned out she lived near me in San Diego.
Oh, cool.
So I reached out to her and I said, I don't know what you charge. I don't know what this, but would you be willing to produce my DVDs?
Oh, wow.
And so I learned from her.
Oh, that's cool.
And my DVDs took off. So that's how my business was born.
So what is on your DVDs? What kind of workouts are they?
It was all body weight workouts based on doing workouts at home.
So you could do it at home. Yeah.
Yeah. It was all how I had trained when I was
I was going to ask you because you were like, I couldn't afford a gym membership. So I'm thinking like, when COVID and everything happened, I'm like, what was I doing in my house?
Yeah,
like,
I did. I turned them into DVDs.
Yeah.
So my business then was very fitness heavy and it was very timely. And my audience was very much the woman who was discouraged, like the woman that had just had kids that had lost their way with their body. And this is 2007, 2008 when the housing market crashed. So we're bouncing back from that.
Yeah.
So there were a lot of women that were learning from me in this. So that's how my business initially started.
And it sounds like you were doing something that not a lot of people were doing. I think a lot of times people try to have like this perfect plan and they're like, so it keeps them from actually starting. And you, like you said, you're like, people were asking me. So it was something as simple as that. And you didn't know where it was going to go. But I love that you just shared that like you were willing to put it out there. Not even proofread. Like I think people worry about like it being perfect. And you're like, well, let's just see where this goes.
And I still operate that way to a fault. Sometimes I make mistakes with that too. But I very much have always been in curiosity and I very much listen to my audience. One thing I usually go against with branding experts is they'll want you to have your whole like final vision plan of all the things you're going to create for your business. And I don't live that way because it's really important to me. You curate your audience, you have your audience, you serve your audience and you give them what they're asking for.
Right.
If you create a product or something before you actually have an audience,
it's not going to sell.
It's not going to sell.
Yeah. Well, and that's why looking at your Instagram, and I know it's even evolved, and I wanted to hear a little bit more about that because it's like you said, you're catering to kind of these, overweight moms that maybe, didn't have finances or whatever it was, and you evolved as a person. Right. So it's like you almost need to attract like a different level of clients. And so how did you kind of shift? Because I see a lot of people get stuck and like, well, this is my audience. I'm like, but that's not you anymore. Yeah. So how did you kind of transition?
So I was actually feeling really confused a few years ago. And just really truthfully, my business I didn't feel like I had my heart in it anymore. I didn't feel passionate about it. I felt like I was putting out new fitness stuff and new workout stuff and nutrition just because people expected it from me. And I was going on I was still doing TV at the time. I was still doing a lot of articles in magazines, things like that, all on fitness, fat loss, how to get a six pack. It was like this whole how to get a six pack. Yeah. And that's kind of what I was known for. I had abs in my 40s and I didn't mention I had 13 magazine covers in my 40s.
Oh, okay. I was going to ask when that all happened.
My last one was at age 49.
Wow.
So I was getting a lot of requests for that stuff and I was doing it, but it didn't light me up. It didn't feel like this was my gift for the world. Yeah. So I was getting kind of confused and I didn't know how to get out of it. So I was where a lot of your listeners might be like, what do I do? Because this isn't really, and so I just kind of started backing off a little bit. And then something really interesting happened to me. I started getting injured. And it started with, I ruptured a disc in my lower back, which made no sense to me. I was like, how did that happen? And so bad that I had foot drop, my right leg stopped working. Right after that healed, I tore my bicep.
Oh, geez.
So like literally.
It's your body's way of saying like, we're not doing this anymore.
Yeah, but I still wasn't listening. And then I broke my foot and I needed like 4 surgeries in a matter of a year. Wow. It was a lot of stuff happening. And so I was kind of forced to back off.
Isn't that crazy?
And when I did that, I started I was doing a different podcast. I was doing my Midlife Conversations podcast used to be called Leveling Up.
Okay.
And at that time I was interviewing people on how they went from setback to massive success because I was in setback. Yeah. That's how I felt. And I was just in this weird mode of what am I going to do next? And then I coupled these injuries with all the things around aging happening. Like my hormones started shifting. My face started changing. Like I started getting a little bit thicker in the middle, like just all this aging stuff. And I was super confused by it because in my 40s, I thought, oh, I'm going to age really well. Like, I've got this. Like I'm going to age super well. Yeah. But something happened after 50 where things started to shift. So I backed off of my fat loss programs. I actually paused all of them. And I told my whole audience, hey, go do my friend's program. I sent them all to one of my friends' companies. I stopped doing everything. And I just went on a deep dive on my own. I did a summit and I did my own podcast just to learn more. Yeah. And I'm so grateful for that happening because I learned so much about hormones, about cortisol, about our metabolism, about aging, about how to age optimize. So much of that I literally changed my whole business without even trying, just from me doing a deep dive myself.
When you learned all that, did anything like heal or change in your body?
So much change. So just to give you like a one example of that. So I had all these injuries and I'm having these setbacks and I can't figure out what's going on with my blood sugar. I started wearing a glucose monitor and I eat super healthy, low glycemic, like no reason I should be having blood sugar spikes. And if anyone listening knows anything about blood sugar, when you eat, your blood sugar should not be 250. My blood sugar was like spiking up to like 250 after having strawberries. So something was wrong. So I was sick. Something was wrong. And I ended up in the hospital for 2 days and we couldn't get to the root of it. And one of my friends mentioned, parasites cause that. I'm like, parasites? What is she talking about? Is she crazy? Yeah. She said, yeah, gut health and your and parasites. So anyways, it sounds wacky to someone listening if they've never heard this, but I was kind of desperate at the time. Like, I don't know what's going on with me. No Western medicine doctor knows. So I did a whole protocol with her on parasite cleansing and my blood sugar normalized. But this is the wild thing. And my weight started coming back to normal. She said, something's feeding those parasites, like something's feeding the gut health. And it turned out I had a breast implant rupture. I had a massive, I had silicone.
Was it like a slow
gel
leak,
formed? Or? No, I had the gel formed implants. It had been, this is going to sound ridiculous. It was my 5th set over the years. And on an ultrasound, it showed the whole gel had like decomposed. It had completely undone. So it was poisoning me.
Oh, geez.
So I ended up having an explant surgery after having implants for 30 years. Wow. Had an explant and everything went back to normal. Like my body went back, my health went back, all of it.
I've heard that there's been some women that are like, I can't figure out why I'm sick. And then they have their implants removed, even if they're not like ruptured. And I'm like, I don't know. Is that your body's way of just kind of rejecting it? Or I mean, yours had a leak. So it would literally.
So I have this whole like thing about, I don't know that implants in themselves are the thing that's so dangerous for people. I think some people, yes. Some people have that. I had implants for 30 years without an issue. Yeah. What I do think is, I have a lot of theories on this. I think a lot of things work together. Like you hear a lot about mold poisoning, or you hear about heavy metals or parasites or gut health, implants, all that stuff actually works together. Yeah. When you've got toxins in your body, even your audience doing hair all day, like when you have a heavy amount of toxins in your body, if your body is not in optimal peak detoxing habit, like it doesn't know how to actually get rid of that stuff, it will wreak havoc on your health. So it all kind of works together. So it could be the implants. It could be for somebody. For me, I think it was part of the whole equation. I don't think it was everything. It was part of it. Yeah, part of it. Yeah,
and I like how you just touched on like hairdressers. I didn't even think about it. Like, yeah, when you're around like these chemicals and stuff, like I know a lot of hairdressers that can't do like certain keratin treatments and things like that. It's funny because as I'm getting older, I was telling Amber, I'm like, I can't even be behind the chair anymore. Like, because I've noticed as I get older, I'm more sensitive to like all of that. What advice could you give to a hairstylist who's around that,
So everyone's body is different and we're all in different states of health. So and this is a whole like deep topic here, but we're all exposed to toxins. Like there's toxins everywhere. Like you cannot avoid it. Like your house could have mold, heavy metals, you could have stuff in your teeth. There's so many, breast implants are a toxin, chemicals in a salon are a toxin, having your nails done is toxin. All of it is. However, some bodies are really efficient at getting rid of stuff, like really going back to health. Like my husband, doesn't matter what we're in, he seems to be like peak health. Wow. However, you start compounding toxic load, then we start compounding problems. So a lot of women think that when they're 50 and aging and things are happening, they think it's just my age. Yeah. What I believe now is it's this compounding effect of different toxins over the years, over time. So for me, for example, I think there was a whole compound effect. I mean, years ago, I was definitely getting Botox. I was definitely had gel nails. I had the implants. I was living in a house that I didn't know had black mold in it. And there was a lot of stuff. So what happens is parasites might sound woo-woo to some people, but it's a real thing. Parasites actually live in our body and help us in a weird way.
Yeah.
So we go eat the same salad and there happens to be some parasite larva in there that we don't know because we're eating organic lettuce. And your body maybe doesn't let it survive in there because it's like you've got the right amount of stomach acid, everything. So it doesn't survive.
Right.
Someone like me who had all that stuff coming in, the parasites are going to thrive and clean that up.
Okay.
So they survive in you because they're cleaning up all of these toxins, but they're also wreaking havoc on your health. So that's not a healthy thing.
Yeah.
What's healthy is to have a really strong gut
Yeah.
and to have your body detoxing really well, having detox pathways open.
Yeah, it's crazy. I just had my blood work done, and I'm 41, and I'm always I'm at that point where I'm like, how's it look? How's it look?
Yeah.
Are we good? Is everything okay?
Yeah.
But I do think as you age, it's important to really are you a fan of like having your blood work done and that kind of stuff?
I do all that. And here's the thing, and so I don't want to mislead people too. I did all the right things in my 40s. Like I felt amazing in my 40s. It didn't pivot for me until 50.
Wow.
And then it changed. And now I feel amazing in my 50s.
Yeah.
But I did go through some stuff.
You had to go through and
So you have to be super curious. And getting your blood, I get my blood done every 90 days. I mean, I'm on it. But
it sounds like it's like all the little things. Like people will ask me because I'm like pretty fit and they're like, well, what are you doing? Like they want like one magic pill. And you're like, well,
there's
it's
no
not.
magic pill.
You're like,
there's nothing.
I do every little thing I can. I'm like, I
Totally.
drink my water. I take my vitamins. I exercise. I try to sleep, like all these little things. I don't know a ton about like, I feel like my nutrition, I'm not an expert like you are. Like I always say like, I know my macros because I did like the bikini competitions. What advice can you give? Because I was sharing this before the podcast. Hairstylists are notorious for, they live on Starbucks.
Totally.
They just drink. It's almost like they're like, oh, I don't want to waste a meal. Like I'm like, you need food to actually function and work. So they just drink energy drinks all day long or Starbucks all day long. And then they come home and have like one crappy meal. I know because I was there for so many years.
Yeah.
And it's funny because I think I was more tired in my 30s than I am in my 40s. But it's because I wasn't taking care of my body. I was working 10 to 12 hour days. I wasn't fueling myself. I wasn't sleeping good. And I just feel like hairstylists are notorious for that. So what advice can you give them to the importance of really taking care of yourself so that you don't burn out?
Yeah. So first and foremost, if you're listening going, well, I do that and I feel fine, it catches up.
Yeah.
So I felt great in my 30s doing whatever the heck I want.
Yeah.
Even in my early 40s, it's going to catch up later. That's number one. Number two, it doesn't have to be these great huge drastic changes. Like, so there's some basics, like you mentioned macros. I don't count macros, but I'm very focused on protein, carbs, and fats. Like I lead every meal with protein.
Yeah.
So first and foremost, if you can get nothing else in, get protein in, because muscle is so healing for so many reasons.
Yeah.
One, it's your longevity thing to have muscle. And when people say like my metabolism slows down when you age, your metabolism actually won't slow down if you have muscle. But if you are not working your muscle and you're not feeding your muscle, you will lose muscle and then you're going to burn less calories at rest. So number one is you've got to focus on muscle, and you do that not just from your workouts, you do that from adding in protein. Also, protein controls your hunger and cravings.
Yeah.
So by adding in, I don't even care what protein you're adding in, but add in protein. If you don't have time to sit down, then have a protein shake, but have some protein. And then fiber is the other thing that's absolutely critical for helping clear things out of your body. So I'll never be a fan of carnivore because I'm a huge fan of low glycemic fruits and vegetables. So
what are some of your favorite? Like it's hard for me. I'm good with my protein. I have a hard time with my veggies, and then some veggies I'm like, ooh.
Yeah, and that could be a gut thing too.
Yeah.
Like not everyone processes, and everyone has different blood work too. Like some people are sensitive to oxalates. There's so many nuances when it comes to vegetables.
Right.
But if you can't eat raw vegetables, then cook them and do that. But I'll never not be a fan of vegetables. I think we need that fiber. So you have to play with what works for
your
you.
body. Yeah, I know.
And listen to that. And then also I'm a fan of carbs, but not grains. So I will have like a sweet potato or a potato over having oatmeal or quinoa or something like that. Because grains linger and you don't necessarily want that. And then I'm a big fan of healthy fats. So avocado, olive oil. I mean, I make scrambled eggs in the morning and I pour olive oil on it. I'm weird like that, but lots of olive oil, lots of avocado, lots of fat. And that's going to help your skin. That's going to help your joints. It's going to help everything.
Yeah. That's like one of the things that I learned is I was like, if you eat good things, it's when you don't eat all day and then you just have a crappy meal and then your body's like, what's going on?
Totally. Yeah.
It's funny because I always tell hairstylists, I'm like, You don't need to overcomplicate it. I know you're busy. Literally, like, if you can just pack some chicken. Like, just bring some chicken to the salon. At least get that down. Like, put down the Celsius and just put some protein in your mouth, you know?
And I don't have an issue with somebody, like, they want a Celsius to go get through whatever, if that's your thing. Like, I could tear that apart too, but you're going to have your vices that you want, but get the nutrients in first. I always tell my fat loss clients that focus on addition versus what you can't have. Like, how do I add in so much of the good that I make less room for the not so amazing?
Yes.
If you really want your Celsius, great. But first, get in your water, get in your protein, get in your fibrous vegetables, like, get in that stuff first. And
then it's easier to say no to, like, the snacks and the crappy stuff. If you're like, okay, I ate my meal or whatever. That's one of the things I'd always do with my trainer. I'd be like, I'd just, prep my protein for the day, and then I'd be less snacky. She'd always know when I was snacking on crap, because she's like, you're not getting your protein in. And I'm like, no.
Yeah, it's true.
So it's like, it's, taking that time it doesn't take that long to even prep small things like that.
No.
And so again, it's just like adapting like healthy habits and patterns and doing it every day. I feel like, like I said, like hairstylists, it's like, that's their story, is like, they don't have time to eat. And I'm like, well, you can schedule yourself a lunch. That's actually one of the things we require at my salon is if they're working a certain amount of clients, we make them take lunches. Like, they have to schedule a lunch.
I love that you do that. That's so
and they'll be like, I'm not hungry. I'm like, I don't care. Then just go sit down and look at your phone.
And then the worst thing that people do is they'll go eat all the sugary stuff as a quick thing. And what happens is you get a blood sugar spike and you get a crash. And high blood sugar is what ages us rapidly. Glycation is from having sugar.
Yeah.
It's what ages your skin. It's what ages your joints. It's what ages everything.
Wow.
So it's the worst thing
I'm not a fan of sugar. It's so funny because I know a lot of women have a sweet tooth. I used to, like, years ago, and my body literally started to feel sick. I was getting I would get every cold that went around, and I was like, I don't know why I'm always sick.
So it's the
sugar,
the
only thing I did is I was like, I've got to cut out sugar, because I had like the biggest sweet tooth. I had to have like a treat every day. And I cut out sugar, and now I don't crave it. Like, every once in a while I'll have a bite of something, but I am a firm believer that, like, I do not like sugar. And I just noticed like what it does for my body.
Yeah. You get it. That's so smart of you. So
now your main audience is just kind of where you're at.
Every time I'm evolved, like, people are like, you redefine yourself all the time.
Yeah.
I don't really feel like I'm redefining. I'm just sharing what I'm walking through.
You're evolving. Yeah.
And whatever I'm walking through, as I walk through the journey and as I become knowledgeable about it, I share with other people.
Yeah.
So anyone that's like, I don't know enough, or like if you're thinking like, I want to start a business, but I don't know enough, or I want to start this, but I'm not the expert. Nobody's expecting you to be the expert. Just be one step ahead of what they're trying to learn. You want to meet clients with the problem that they're thinking about.
Right.
So I serve women in their 40s, 50s, and 60s. Like, that's my audience. And I'm asking questions that they're asking. So when I share like an open book about so many things, somebody might look at me like, oh, she's a reality show. Heck, she had all these injuries, and then she had the parasite thing, and then the explant, like all these things. Yeah. But it's real life.
I was gonna say, I just found it very like refreshing. Like, it's authentic. Yeah. And I think if you can be authentic, people trust you. They're like, I don't care. And I was gonna ask you that too. I feel like in the fitness space, there's such a, it's so, like, even my trainer, I'm like, you need to post more. And she puts so much pressure on herself.
Yeah.
Is that hard for you being in the fitness world? Like, you feel like you're like, I don't want to be, Barbie anymore. I don't want to be like, I want to be me.
So that was hard before I pivoted and did this. It was hard a couple years ago when people were expecting me to still be putting out how to get an 8-pack and how to do all this.
You're like, I don't want to.
And I felt like, well, I don't feel like I want to be in an 8-pack body all. I mean, I do still have lean abs and stuff, but I don't want to feel competition ready all the time. That's not. It was a lot of pressure on myself. Yeah. And I felt incongruent. Like, I would be out worried, like, is someone going to see me eating this? And that's a sign that you're in the wrong industry. Yeah. If you're worried that you are not going to look congruent when someone sees you, that's a problem. So to me, I share what I'm walking through, and I don't share from a victim standpoint. Like, you'll never see me. Like, when I had to get the explant, I wasn't like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I have to get this explant. My life is over. Like, I didn't do any of that. Yeah. I interviewed surgeons on my podcast. I interviewed people that decided to not explant. I like made it a big deal. I interviewed a bra company about like, how do you fit yourself after? Like, I interviewed somebody about how do you deal with the psychology of not having them anymore? Like, I just share. And the reason women, I think, like that is I'm meeting them with what they're having in their head.
They're asking those questions. Yeah. I love that. What's one piece of advice you could give to any listeners in the business space, whether they're male or female or hairstylists? Like, it just sounds like you're like, just kind of go, just move, like, put yourself out there. What's helped you to share like you do? Like, you're like, you seem so comfortable, and you're like, well, my audience wanted to hear that. But I talk to so many, I train a lot of hairstylists, and they're like, oh, I'm scared to put content out there. And I'm like, you need to, like, with so much information right now, you need to be relatable. You need to almost, you know where I'm going with this?
So this is what I'm going to tell you. If you have knowledge and you are not sharing it, you're selfish.
Oh, I love that.
Because it feels very selfish that I don't want to put something out because someone might judge me or it might not be good enough for what? Like you're making it about you.
Yeah.
If you make it about other people, what do they need?
Yeah.
Then that is selfless.
Yeah, I love that.
So I don't even hesitate if I have information that can help somebody else. And I have lots of friends, lots of colleagues that do not share the whole reel of what's going on.
Yeah.
I know. And I wish they would because it would help so many people. So people think I'm crazy sometimes that I share things. Like even today, like we're doing this, you're going to be on my podcast next, and I'm going to share with my audience about hair extensions. And I have friends that are like, why do you tell people you have hair extensions? I'm thinking, what?
Why does it matter?
Why? But why would I not?
Yeah.
Like if this might help some woman like that wants to do that. Same thing with the implants. I had people actually mad at me that I was shedding light on getting an explant. They're like, that's making people like, I was like, what?
Yeah.
But this is what I'm walking through. So I'm going to share. So I share what I'm walking through. So if you're hesitant to share, I would ask you to check yourself on what is that coming from. And is it a selfish thing? Are you being selfless? Because we all have information that can help others, whether you believe it or not, like you can help others. So even if I didn't do my business anymore and I was like, I don't want to do this, I still have knowledge that I would feel I should get out there to people.
Yeah, I love that. I do feel like everybody's called to share.
Yeah.
And I love that you said that because I was like telling Garrett the other day, my husband, I'm like, yeah, I always preach like, if you're selfish not to put yourself out there, you're selfish not to share. Like, who are you not impacting?
Right.
Because you're uncomfortable. And I love that you're like, yeah, when you look at it that with that frame, there's been so many times where I'm like, I don't want to do this. I'm uncomfortable.
That's right.
And I do it anyway. And then it's like, I think more doors open up too.
Totally.
And you get more reach and more impact. And it's like, it's such a short life. It's like, you got to go all in. And like you said, share your knowledge.
And then I also, when in doubt, just share the truth. That's the other thing. Like sometimes I hesitate. I'm like, that sounds like even just now you're talking to me and I'm like, okay, am I going to talk about the whole parasite thing right now? Cause that just sounds like a lot after I just like, that's what goes through my head. And then I'm like, no, but it's real. So I'm just going to share it. So I just, when in doubt, just tell the truth.
Yeah.
Like don't edify it. Just tell the truth, whatever that's coming up. Come from a place of serving. And I don't know if you're listening, if you've got faith or not, but I happen to be somebody of faith. So I always think like, I want God to talk through me. So I think of things like that too. Like what would God want me to say or what would that, so put it off of you and that could help too.
I love that you just said that too. Immediately kind of got chills there because it's like, yeah, there's sometimes when you're like, I don't know what to say. And when you, same with me, I'm like, God, talk through me then.
Yeah.
Give me the strength, give me the courage. And when you're open to do that, I'm like, wow, that sounded great.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think that's important too, to understand like in this life, you're not alone.
Yeah.
And that if you're open to it, you'll get guidance and you'll get prompted on what to say to help other people. So
also when you tell the truth, you'll never feel bad about, comments or people. So I'll give you guys a real example. So years ago, I definitely did Botox and I stopped because as I was sharing before we recorded, I didn't like what it was doing to my forehead being over 50. I was like, and I also going through the toxin journey, I was like, I don't want to add anything. So I've stopped. But about a year ago, I just was like doing what I do cause I'm a female and I'm human. I'm like, maybe I should try it again. So I told my audience, I'm like, I'm going to try it again because I'm just feeling it. I'm going to see. I know I said all these things. I'm just going to try it again. And I had some people like really give me some like throw shade on me. Yeah. I'm like, but I'm telling you the truth. So it didn't affect me because I was telling the truth, if that makes sense. Where I think we feel bad about something is when we're being secretive or we're lying. Yeah. If you're not being truthful or you're hiding something, you are going to feel the impact of someone's comment.
Yeah.
That's why people get so upset when
triggered.
When someone's like, you have too much whatever, and people are triggered. Well, they probably do, and they're not sharing that they have it. But if you tell the truth, you do not get triggered.
Yeah, you're like, oh yeah, that is true. Thank you. Yeah. I love that. Well, you guys, it's been so fun having Natalie Jill on the podcast. You guys definitely check out her podcast, and it's
Midlife Conversations.
Like we could like sit here and talk all day, but we got to get to the salon at some point and do hair and all the fun things. So you guys, thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of the Big Money Stylist Podcast. Catch a new episode out every single week, and who knows, maybe me and Natalie are going to have a podcast later down the road. I'm going to see, did she try Botox again? What's she really doing? So thank you so much for being on the show.
Thanks for having me.
And I look forward to, getting to know you more at the salon today.
Thanks for having me.
All right. Thanks guys. Bye.